A 17-year-old girl, hoodie up and headphones on, shuffles into her business class seat on a flagship international flight. She's tired. She just wants to sleep. But the senior flight attendant, a woman named Brenda Sullivan, looks at her tracksuit, at her skin color, and decides she doesn't belong. This attendant doesn't just ask a question. She builds a case. She rallies other passengers. She calls security and has the teenager physically dragged, crying and humiliated, off the plane. Brenda smirks as the girl is escorted away, feeling victorious. She has no idea she just humiliated the one person on Earth she couldn't afford to cross. She didn't just kick out a passenger. She kicked out Maya Thompson, the daughter of the CEO who owns the entire airline. And the karma that's coming is faster, colder, and more brutal than the jet stream. The hum of New York's JFK International Airport was a dull roar behind Maya Thompson's noise-cancelling headphones. She was 17, exhausted from a week of collegiate debate prep, and wanted nothing more than to curl up in seat 7A and sleep for the entire 7-hour flight to London Heathrow. She was flying to meet her father, Marcus Thompson, for a brief spring break holiday. Maya wasn't dressed for the part, at least not according to the unspoken rules of the Aerovantis Global First Lounge. She wore a simple, high-quality, but nondescript grey tracksuit, a gift from her dad. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, neat bun. She carried a well-worn leather backpack, heavy with textbooks and a laptop. She looked, to any undiscerning eye, like any other teenager. She approached the gate, C44, just as they called for business-class boarding. She pulled out her phone, the digital boarding pass glowing on the screen. The gate agent, a man named David, scanned it. He paused for a half-second, his eyebrows raising almost imperceptibly as he glanced from the business class designation to the girl in the hoodie. But the machine beeped green, and he waved her through. "Enjoy your flight, miss." Maya gave a small, polite nod and walked down the jet bridge. She could feel the stares. She was used to them. She was used to the "Are you lost?" looks when she met her father at his club, the "Is she with you?" whispers when she entered high-end restaurants. It was the tax she paid for being young, black, and preferring comfort over couture. She stepped onto the aircraft, a massive Boeing 777. The air was cool, scented with a faint, sterile, floral smell. To the left was the cockpit. To the right, the entrance to the exclusive business-class cabin. Standing at the doorway like a sentinel was senior flight attendant Brenda Sullivan. Brenda had been flying for 22 years. She was immaculate, her blonde hair pulled back into a severe bun that seemed to pull the skin tight around her eyes. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her name tag, Brenda, polished to a high sheen. She saw herself not as a service employee, but as the guardian of the cabin. She was the barrier between the civility of business class and the riff-raff in economy. And as Maya Thompson approached, Brenda's internal alarm bells, rusted with years of prejudice, began to clang. "Good afternoon," Maya said quietly, pulling one earbud out. Brenda's smile was a thin, painted-on line that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Her tone was not welcoming. It was an accusation. Maya, already anticipating this, held up her phone. Brenda took it from her, her manicured fingers brushing the screen. She squinted. 7A. "Are you sure, dear? This is the business class cabin." "Yes, I know. 7A. "Window," Maya said, pointing. Brenda's eyes flicked from the phone to Maya's face, to her tracksuit, and back. "This way," she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. She led Maya into the cabin, where the hushed tones of classical music played, and passengers were already settling into their private pods. Maya found 7A, a beautiful lie-flat pod by the window. She slid in, grateful for the privacy walls, and began stowing her backpack. "That bag is too large for the footwell, miss," Brenda snapped from the aisle. "It needs to go overhead." "It's not," Maya said softly, demonstrating. "It fits perfectly under the ottoman, see?" Brenda's lips thinned. "Overhead bins are preferred. We need the space clear." She watched as Maya, sighing, stood up, opened the bin, and placed her bag inside. Brenda wasn't just enforcing rules, she was establishing dominance. She was making it clear that Maya was being watched. Maya finally settled in, pulling her blanket out of its plastic wrap. She just wanted this to be over. A few minutes later, another passenger settled into seat 7C across the aisle. He was a portly man in an expensive but ill-fitting suit, already barking into his phone about leveraging assets. This was Mr. Harrison. He gave Maya a single dismissive glance and turned away, creating a wall of importance around himself. Brenda returned, offering pre-departure beverages. She cooed at Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, so good to have you back with us. Champagne, orange juice?" "Champagne, and make it quick," he grunted. Brenda then turned to Maya. The warmth vanished. "You, juice or water?" "Just water, please," Maya said. Brenda poured it from a plastic jug, not the elegant glass bottles, and placed it on the console with a sharp clack. She didn't wait for a "thank you" before turning on her heel and marching back to the galley. In the galley, she found her junior colleague, Chloe. Chloe was only 6 months on the job and still terrified of the senior attendant. "You see 7A?" Brenda muttered, angrily wiping a non-existent smudge from a glass. "The girl in the tracksuit?" Chloe asked. "Yes. Mark my words, there's something wrong there. She doesn't belong. Probably a fraudulent miles redemption or a stolen credit card. People like that, they try these things all the time. They think they're so clever. But, Brenda, her pass scanned fine," Chloe offered weakly. "The system would have flagged it." "The system misses things," Brenda hissed. "People miss things. I don't. She's not supposed to be here, and I'm going to find out why." Brenda's mind was made up. She wasn't just a flight attendant. She was a detective, and she had just found her suspect. The flight hadn't even pushed back from the gate, and Maya Thompson was already guilty. The boarding process continued, the cabin filled with the quiet rustle of newspapers, the click of briefcases, and the polite murmurs of seasoned travelers. Maya, cocooned in her pod, tried to block it all out. She put both headphones back in and closed her eyes, hoping Brenda would just forget about her. But Brenda was not the forgetting type. She was stewing in the galley, her suspicion fermenting into a toxic certainty. The final passenger was boarding. The captain, Captain Rogers, made his pre-flight announcement, his voice a generic, reassuring baritone. "Flight attendants, please prepare for pushback." This was Brenda's moment. She saw Mr. Harrison in 7C, flagging her down, and she swooped in, seeing her opportunity. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Can I get you another champagne before we go?" Mr. Harrison lowered his voice, though it was still loud enough for Maya to hear over the low thrum of her music. He gesked. "I'm not one to complain, Brenda, but this is not the standard I expect from Aerovantis. I pay over $10,000 a year for my executive membership, and I'm sitting across from a child in a tracksuit. It's unsettling. It diminishes the brand. It makes me uncomfortable." He was looking right at Maya. Maya's stomach clenched. She pulled her headphones off, her face warming with a flush of humiliation. Brenda's face became a mask of faux sympathy. "Sir, I understand completely. The integrity of the business class cabin is my top priority. I assure you, I am handling it." This was all the validation she needed. Fortified by the passenger's complaint, Brenda turned her full, undivided attention to Maya. "Mom," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire front cabin to hear. "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass again, and your passport." Maya's heart hammered. This was not normal. I already showed you, at the door, and I am asking for it again. Now please." Brenda's hand was out, expectant. Shaking slightly, Maya fumbled for her phone and her passport, handing them over. The cabin was now quiet. Everyone was watching. Brenda inspected the passport. "Maya Thompson," she looked at the phone. "This digital pass, it can be faked, you know." "It's not faked." Maya's voice was a whisper, but it cracked with indignation. "That's me, Maya Thompson, seat 7A. "It's highly unusual," Brenda pressed on, her voice growing colder, more prosecutorial. "This seat, 7A, is often held as a priority booking. It's very strange that it would be assigned to you, with no frequent flyer status." "My father booked the ticket," Maya said, her voice small. She hated this. She hated having to explain herself. "Ah, yes. Your father," Brenda said, the word dripping with corrosive doubt. She looked at Mr. Harrison, who smirked back. "A lot of people's fathers book these tickets on stolen cards." "That's not true," Maya said, her voice finally rising. "It's not stolen. My name is on the passport, and it's on the ticket. Please, just give them back to me." "I am not satisfied with this," Brenda declared, pocketing the passport. "I believe this ticket is fraudulent. You are not a ticketed business class passenger. You have breached security." "What?" "No, I haven't." Maya was frantic. Call the gate. They scanned it. It was fine." "David at the gate is a trainee. He clearly made a mistake I am now forced to correct," Brenda said, standing tall. "Ma'am, I am asking you to gather your belongings and move to an economy seat." Maya was stunned into silence. I'm not moving. This is my seat. I'm not moving." The junior attendant, Chloe, watching from the galley, felt sick. She hurried over. "Brenda, the manifest. I checked it. Thompson, M. It's confirmed. It's a CEO guest booking code." Brenda shot Chloe a look of pure venom. "Do not interrupt me, Chloe. That code could mean anything. It's clearly a system error. This passenger does not belong here. She is being disruptive and refusing to comply." She turned back to Maya, her face a mask of stone. "This is your final warning. Either you walk to the back of the plane, or I will have you removed from this aircraft entirely." Maya's eyes filled with hot, angry tears. She couldn't believe this was happening. "I am not moving," she whispered, her entire body shaking. "You are making a mistake." "Oh, I'm making a mistake?" Brenda scoffed, a twisted smile playing on her lips. "I don't think so, dear." She grabbed the intercabin phone. Her voice, suddenly calm and professional, echoed through the plane. "This is Senior Attendant Sullivan. I require immediate assistance at the 2 left door. We have a non-compliant individual in seat 7A who has breached the cabin and is refusing to leave. Security is required for removal, immediately." Mr. Harrison leaned back in his seat, satisfied. Maya Thompson put her face in her hands, the tears now streaming, as she heard the heavy footsteps thudding down the jet bridge. The 2 airport security officers who boarded the plane were not aggressive, not yet, but they were large men who filled the narrow business class aisle with an air of unyielding authority. Their names were Officer Miller and Officer Sanchez. They were tired, at the end of a long shift, and had no patience for drama. "This is her?" Officer Miller asked, pointing his chin at Maya, who was now visibly trembling, her face stained with tears. "Yes, officer," Brenda said, her voice a model of professional concern. This individual, we have no valid record of her ticket. She snuck into the business class cabin and is now refusing to leave. She's delaying the entire flight. We need her removed." "Snuck in? I didn't sneak in," Maya cried, looking at the officers. "Please, my ticket is valid. She has my passport. She won't check the system." Officer Miller looked at Brenda. "Did you check the manifest?" "The manifest is inconclusive, officer." Brenda lied, her voice smooth as ice. "There appears to be a fraudulent booking code. Corporate security will have to sort it out on the ground. But as the senior attendant, I am deeming her a security risk, and I need her off my plane. Now." This was the magic word. Security risk. The officer's entire demeanor changed. Their job wasn't to argue with the flight crew, it was to remove the threat. "Ma'am," Officer Sanchez said, his voice now firm, "I need you to stand up and gather your belongings. You're coming with us." "No, please no," Maya begged. "You don't understand. My father, he's waiting for me. Just call your supervisor, please." "We're not calling anyone, ma'am," Officer Miller said, losing patience. He reached down and unbuckled her seatbelt. "You can come with us, standing, or we can carry you. It's your choice. But you are leaving this aircraft." The finality in his voice broke her. The fight went out of her, replaced by a deep, shuddering wave of humiliation. The entire cabin was silent, every eye fixed on her. Some passengers were filming on their phones, their screens like tiny, glowing judgments. Mr. Harrison looked on with a smug, self-satisfied smirk. Where is my bag?" Maya whispered, her voice hoarse. "In the overhead," Brenda said coldly. "Officers, if you would." Officer Sanchez popped open the bin and pulled down Maya's heavy backpack. He didn't hand it to her. He held it, as if it were evidence. "Stand up, ma'am. Let's go," Officer Miller commanded. Slowly, Maya uncurled herself from the pot. She felt small, exposed, and utterly powerless. As she stepped into the aisle, she was flanked by the two large men. "This way," Miller said, gently but firmly pushing her shoulder. They began the walk. It was the longest walk of her life, past the other business-class passengers, who either stared with pity or, like Mr. Harrison, with open contempt. Brenda Sullivan stood by the galley, her arms crossed, a tiny, triumphant smirk on her face. As Maya passed, Brenda leaned in. "You should have taken the economy seat when I offered it," she whispered. Maya flinched as if she'd been struck. She said nothing. She just kept walking. They exited the business cabin and entered the economy section. Here, the humiliation amplified. The cabin was packed. Every single passenger turned to watch as a crying 17-year-old girl was marched down the aisle by two security officers. The whispers were immediate. "What did she do? Must be drunk. I bet she tried to sneak into first class. Look at her. She's just a kid. How awful." Maya kept her eyes fixed on the floor, on the patterned blue carpet, counting every step as a fresh wave of shame washed over her. It felt endless. Finally, they reached the door. She was handed off to the gate agent, David, the same one who had scanned her ticket. He looked confused and stressed. "What's going on?" he asked the officers. "Senior attendant's orders. Fraudulent ticket, non-compliant. She's your problem now," Officer Miller grunted, handing David the backpack. He and Sanchez turned and went back to their duties, the incident already forgotten. Maya stood in the middle of the jet bridge, shaking. "Brenda said you were disruptive," David said, his voice accusatory. "You've delayed the flight. You can't just—" "I wasn't disruptive." Maya finally found her voice, and it was raw with anguish. "She lied. She took my passport. She wouldn't listen to me. She said I didn't belong. Look, miss, what am I supposed to do? David said, throwing his hands up. The flight is closed. I can't let you back on. Brenda has the final say on her aircraft. You'll have to come with me to the customer service desk. My passport. She still has my passport, Maya said, a new wave of panic rising. David sighed, picked up his phone, and called the plane. Brenda? It's David. Yeah, you still have her passport. Okay, I'll send someone, right. He hung up. Someone will bring it out. Come on. He led her back into the terminal, now bustling with angry passengers from other delayed flights. He took her to a small, sterile customer service office and gestured to a hard plastic chair. Sit here. I have to figure out what to do with you. He left, closing the door. Maya was alone. She wrapped her arms around herself, the adrenaline fading, leaving her cold and numb. And then the full weight of the situation hit her. She was stranded in New York with no passport, and her father was on the other side of the ocean, waiting for a plane she was no longer on. She dropped her head into her hands, and for the first time since she was a little girl, she wept. Not quiet tears, but great, gulping, hopeless sobs in a cold, empty office. Maya cried for 10 minutes, a storm of humiliation, rage, and fear. When the sobs finally subsided, a cold, hard anger began to take their place. She wiped her face, her hand still shaking. She looked in her backpack. Her laptop was there, her textbooks, and thank God her phone. They hadn't taken her phone. She had one call to make. She pulled it out, her fingers flying over the screen. She hit the contact, labelled Dad. It was late evening in London. Marcus Thompson was in the Aerovantis flagship lounge at Heathrow, a vast, quiet space of dark wood and plush leather. He was sitting in a private corner, reviewing quarterly reports on his tablet, a cup of tea untouched beside him. He was a tall, imposing man, known in the industry for his sharp intellect and his absolute, unyielding demand for perfection. He had built Aerovantis from a small regional carrier into a global titan. He was, in a word, powerful. His personal phone buzzed. He smiled when he saw Maya's picture. He was looking forward to seeing her. "Hey, baby girl," he answered, his voice warm. "You're supposed to be in the air. Did you get Wi-Fi already?" The voice that came back was not the one he expected. It was small, broken, and terrified. "Dad?" Marcus Thompson sat bolt upright. Every ounce of CEO vanished, replaced by pure father. "Maya, what's wrong? What happened? Are you hurt?" "Dad, they kicked me off the plane," she sobbed, the dam breaking again. The lounge disappeared. The reports vanished. His world narrowed to his daughter's voice. "What? What did you say? Where are you?" "I'm at JFK, in an office, the flight attendant. Her name was Brenda. She said my ticket was fake. She said I didn't belong. She took my passport and called security. Dad, they dragged me off the plane in front of everyone." A cold, tectonic rage, slow-moving and utterly devastating, began to build deep inside Marcus Thompson. He kept his voice perfectly level. "Maya, listen to me. Are you safe? Are you physically unharmed?" "Yes. I'm okay. I'm in an office by the gate." "Good. Is anyone with you?" "No, the gate agent, David. He left me here." "Put him on the phone." "He's not here, Dad. Find him. Go to the door. Find him. Now." Maya, jolted by the steel in his voice, did as she was told. She opened the door and found David outside, pacing and talking anxiously into his radio. "David!" she yelled. He spun around, annoyed. "What? I'm busy. I'm trying to deal with your—" "My father wants to speak to you," Maya said, holding out the phone. David rolled his eyes, exasperated. "Look, miss, I don't have time for this. Your father can call the customer service hotline. I've got a plane to manage." "He said to speak to you now," Maya insisted. With a loud sigh, David snatched the phone. "Sir, this is David Miller, Aerovantis Gate Supervisor. I understand you're upset, but your daughter was removed for non-compliance and suspicion of—" He was cut off by a voice so cold and quiet, it chilled him to the bone. "My name is Marcus Thompson. Pull up employee ID Le01. I am the founder and chief executive officer of this airline. You are speaking to me on a recorded line." David's face went from ruddy red to the color of ash. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He looked at the phone, then at Maya, his eyes wide with dawning, sickening horror. "Sir," he stammered. Mr. Thompson, I didn't know. I had no idea." "You will address me as Mr. Thompson, yes," Marcus said, his voice lethally calm. "Now, listen to me very, very carefully. You have one job. You are to walk to the captain of LHR 001. You will inform him that he has a Code Red CEO directive. That flight is not to push back. It is grounded, indefinitely. Do you understand me?" "But, sir, we're already delayed. The passengers—" "Did I ask you about the passengers?" Marcus's voice was a whip crack. "Or did I give you an order?" "Yes, sir. Grounding the flight. Right now, sir." David was trembling, fumbling for his radio. "Second," Marcus continued, "you will find my daughter's passport, which your crew has stolen. Third, you will get the captain of that aircraft, the purser, and senior flight attendant Brenda Sullivan off that plane and into the operations office. I will be on video link in 5 minutes. Fourth, you will personally escort my daughter to the flagship first lounge, and you will not let her out of your sight until a director-level manager arrives to relieve you. Is any part of that unclear?" "No, sir. Not at all, sir. I'll do it right now." "Good. Now, put my daughter back on the phone." David, shaking, handed the phone back to Maya. "Baby girl, you still with me?" Marcus's voice was warm again, all business gone. "Yes, Dad. You're going to be okay. David is going to take you to the lounge. You sit tight. I'm handling this. I am so sorry this happened to you, but I promise you, I will fix it." "Okay, Dad. I love you. I'm going to hang up and make 2 calls. I'll see you soon." Marcus hung up. He immediately dialed his chief of operations for North America. "Paul," he said, his voice flat and dangerous, "we have a 5-alarm fire at JFK." Back in the terminal, David looked at Maya as if she were a ghost. Ms. Thompson, please, this way. The lounge is right here. Can I get you anything? Water? A soda?" "My passport," Maya said, her voice hard, echoing her father's. "Get my passport." "Yes, ma'am," David said, sweating. "Right away." On board LHR 001, Brenda Sullivan was in the galley, buzzing with adrenaline. She was regaling Chloe with her victory. "You see? You have to be firm. You let one slip by, and the whole standard collapses." She was probably halfway to economy by now, right where she— The cabin phone buzzed. Brenda answered it, still smiling. Galley, Brenda, speaking. It was David, the gate agent. His voice was a high-pitched, terrified squeak. "Brenda, you need to get off the plane, now, and bring the captain and the purser. We have a code red, a CEO directive." Brenda's smile froze. "What?" "David, stop being hysterical. We're already late. I'm not— Brenda, ground the plane. The passenger in 7A. The girl you kicked off. It was Maya Thompson, Marcus Thompson's daughter." The blood drained from Brenda's face. The color, the warmth, the life. It all vanished in one catastrophic second. She dropped the phone, which clattered against the galley wall, swinging by its cord. Chloe stared at her. "Brenda, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Brenda couldn't speak. She just pointed at the phone. Chloe picked it up. "Hello? Get off the plane, all of you. Ops office, now!" David shrieked and hung up. Brenda stumbled out of the galley. She saw Mr. Harrison in 7C, who gave her a conspiratorial thumbs up. The sight of him made her want to be sick. She staggered to the cockpit. "Captain Rogers? We have to go to the ops office. The flight is grounded." "What?" the captain said, spinning in his chair. "Grounded by who? We're 40 minutes late. I'm not grounding this plane for anything short of a bomb." It's a code red. From the CEO, Brenda whispered, the words tasting like ash. The passenger we removed, she was Marcus Thompson's daughter." The colour drained from Captain Rogers's face. He unbuckled his seatbelt in silence. "Chloe," he said into the intercom, his voice suddenly gravelly. "Take my place. We have to go." The three of them, Captain Rogers, Brenda, and the stunned purser, walked off the aircraft, past the confused and murmuring passengers. The walk to the operations office was a silent funeral march. They entered the sterile, windowless room. David was there, along with the director of airport operations, Paul, who looked like he had just been pulled from a fire, and on the large wall-mounted screen was the face of Marcus Thompson. He was not in the lounge anymore. He was in the Heathrow crisis management room. His expression was not angry, it was glacial. It was the calm, terrifying face of absolute power. "Good evening," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "We find ourselves in an interesting situation." No one spoke. Brenda was visibly shaking, trying to clasp her hands to stop them from trembling. "Who?" Marcus said, his eyes scanning the group. "Is senior flight attendant Brenda Sullivan." Brenda made a small choking sound. She raised a trembling hand. I am, sir." Marcus's eyes locked onto her. It felt like being pinned by lasers. "Ms. Sullivan, you have been with Aerovantis for 22 years. In that time, you have presumably been trained on our core values: integrity, respect, service. Today you seem to have forgotten them." "Sir, Brenda began, her voice cracking. "You will be silent," Marcus said, and she flinched as if struck. "I want you to explain to me, in your own words, why my 17-year-old daughter, a ticketed, confirmed, business-class passenger and a minor, was forcibly removed from your aircraft and accused of fraud." "Sir, I thought," Brenda stammered. She didn't look right. She was in a tracksuit, and the passenger in 7C, Mr. Harrison, he complained. He said he was uncomfortable." "He was uncomfortable," Marcus repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "So to make one passenger comfortable, you chose to humiliate and eject another. You saw a young black woman, and your first, immediate and only instinct was, she doesn't belong. You didn't check the manifest properly, because if you had, you would have seen the CEO guest booking. You would have seen the name, but you didn't want to see it. You wanted to be right." "Sir, it was a mistake, a terrible mistake in judgment," Brenda pleaded, the tears now streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "No," Marcus said. "A mistake is spilling coffee. A mistake is forgetting the pretzels. What you did was a conscious act of prejudice. You abused your authority. You lied to airport security. And you put my child in a terrifying and humiliating position. You are a disgrace to the uniform." He turned his gaze. "Captain Rogers." The captain stood straighter. "Yes, sir. You are the pilot in command. That aircraft is your ship. At what point did you intervene? At what point did you, as the ultimate authority, demand to see the fraudulent ticket? At what point did you protect a minor from being removed by armed officers? Or did you just trust your crew? Rogers's face was grim. I trusted my crew, sir. I was misinformed. You were lazy, Marcus snapped. You were more concerned about your pushback time than about the life of a passenger. You failed in your most basic duty of care. You let a bully run your cabin. The room was utterly silent, save for Brenda's quiet, gasping sobs. Marcus Thompson looked at the group on the screen for a long, agonizing moment. He was no longer just a father. He was the CEO, and this was not just an incident. It was a cancer in his company. My daughter is now safe in the lounge, he said, his voice flat. She will be flying to London on my private jet, which is currently being dispatched from Teterboro. She will never have to set foot on one of my commercial flights alone again. So that problem is solved. Now, we solve this one. He looked at each of them in turn, and with each sentence, he ended a career. Brenda Sullivan. Brenda looked up, her face a mask of desperate hope. Sir, please. My career. It's my whole life. Your career, Marcus said, is over. Effective immediately, you are terminated from Aerovantis. Your 22 years of service are nullified. You will be blacklisted from our airline and our partner carriers for life. You will be escorted from the premises by the same security team you called on my daughter. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. Get her out of my sight. Brenda crumpled. No, you can't. Please, I have a mortgage. It was a mistake. Get her out, Marcus repeated, his voice unchanged. Officer Miller and Officer Sanchez, who had been standing by the door, looked at each other, their faces grim. They understood the irony. They stepped forward and took Brenda by the arms. Ma'am, you need to come with us, Miller said, his voice devoid of emotion. They dragged the hysterical, wailing Brenda Sullivan out of the operations office, her career ending not with a pension, but with a walk of shame past the very gate she once ruled. Marcus watched the door close before turning back to the screen. Captain Rogers, you are grounded, effective immediately. You will be demoted to first officer, and you will be on administrative leave for 6 months without pay, pending a full internal review. When and if you return, you will be flying short-haul domestic routes until my operations team decides you've relearned what the word command means. You are dismissed. Captain Rogers, white-faced, nodded once, turned, and left the room. Paul, Marcus said to his operations director. The junior attendant, Chloe. She verified the manifest. She tried to warn Brenda. Yes, sir, Paul said. She is suspended for 2 months without pay. She stood by. She let it happen. But she's young. When she returns, she is on probation for 1 year, and she will be required to lead the anti-bias training for the entire JFK hub. She will use this story as her primary example. She will learn, or she will be out. Understood? Understood, sir. David, Marcus said, fixing the gate agent with a stare. David flinched. Sir, you are the only reason my daughter was able to call me. But you also let her sit in an office alone, and you were rude to her. You are on final written warning. The next time you fail to verify a passenger's status, the next time you roll your eyes at a customer, you will be joining Ms. Sullivan. Go back to your gate and handle the 400 passengers you now have to rebook. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, David said, and practically ran from the room. The screen went black. The reckoning was over. On board LHR 0 Lolaha 1, the atmosphere was toxic. The passengers had been sitting in a sealed metal tube on the tarmac for nearly 90 minutes. Phones were out. Angry emails were being sent. Business deals were being missed. The air, once cool and floral-scented, was now stale and thick with collective frustration. The original flight crew, including the purser, had been marched off the plane with the captain, their faces ashen. They were replaced by a new, stony-faced crew who had been pulled from standby. The new captain, a man named Miles, had made a brief, curt announcement over the PA. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Miles. We are aware of the significant delay. It was due to a critical personnel issue with the previous crew, which has now been resolved. We are awaiting final clearance and a new flight plan. We appreciate your patience." "Appreciate our patience," a man muttered. "I'll bill them for my patience." In seat 7C, Mr. Harrison was vibrating with rage. His face was a blotchy, unpleasant shade of purple. He had already unbuckled his seatbelt for the 4th time, convinced he could somehow intimidate the plane into moving. He saw the new purser, a tall, imposing man named Robert with short-cropped hair and an ex-military bearing, walking down the aisle. "You, purser!" Harrison bellowed, snapping his fingers. Robert stopped, turning to face him. His eyes were calm, but flat. "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" "How can you help?" Harrison scoffed, his voice loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "You can start by telling me what in God's name is going on. This is the most incompetent, unprofessional display I have ever witnessed. I have a 10 a.m. meeting in London that I am now going to miss. This is a multi-million-dollar disaster." "I understand your frustration, sir. We are doing everything we can," Robert began. "You're not doing anything," Harrison shouted, standing up to his full, unimpressive height. "This is all because of that delinquent, the girl in the hoodie, all of this entire 4-hour delay, because your pathetic crew couldn't handle one little problem. I'm going to have all of your jobs for this. I want the CEO's personal number. I run Harrison Global, and we spend over $5 million a year with this airline. This is an outrage." Robert stood still for a moment, letting Harrison's tirade echo in the now silent cabin. Every passenger was watching. "Are you finished, sir?" Robert asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "No, I am not. I want compensation. I want lifetime platinum status. And I want a written guarantee that the girl who caused this, that little stowaway, is in jail. I want her arrested." Robert nodded slowly, as if ticking items off a mental list. "I see. Sir, you are referring to the young passenger who was in seat 7A, Ms. Maya Thompson." "I don't care what her name is," Harrison spat. "She was a clear security risk, and I'm glad Brenda, a real professional by the way, had the guts to throw her off." "Well, sir," Robert said, his voice becoming surgically precise, "I'm afraid you are operating under several misapprehensions." He took a small step closer, lowering his voice just enough to create an intimate, terrifying bubble around them, though the front-row passengers could still hear every word. "First," Robert said, "Ms. Sullivan is no longer an employee of this airline. She was terminated for cause, effective 20 minutes ago, for gross misconduct and violation of our anti-discrimination policies." Harrison's mouth fell open. "What? That's ridiculous. She was protecting the cabin." "No, sir. She was abusing a child. Which brings me to my second point." Robert's eyes were like chips of ice. "The man you saw on the video link in the operations office, the one you were complaining about, that was Mr. Marcus Thompson, the founder and CEO of Aerovantis Global." The purple in Harrison's face vanished, replaced by a pasty, sick-room white. The CEO, he was—" "Yes, sir. And Ms. Maya Thompson, the 17-year-old girl you found unsettling, the one you demanded be removed? That," Robert said, leaning in, "is his daughter. A collective gasp went through the cabin. Harrison physically stumbled back, collapsing into his pod. No, that's not possible. You're lying. It's a trick. I am not lying, sir, Robert said. And here is the final, most important piece of information. The twist, you might say. Harrison was shaking his head, his hands fluttering. I just made a comment. I was concerned. Oh, it was more than a comment, Mr. Harrison, Robert said. He pulled a small company tablet from under his jacket. While we were grounded, our operations director, Paul, was thorough. He pulled the cabin's internal CCTV footage at Mr. Thompson's request. We have you, on video, leaning across the aisle, complaining about Ms. Thompson. We have you calling her unsettling and diminishing the brand. And then we have this. Robert turned the tablet. He didn't show it to Harrison, he just described it. This is the footage from 1942, just as the security officers were escorting a crying 17-year-old off the plane. And there you are, sir, in 7C, looking at Ms. Sullivan, and you gave her a thumbs up. You smirked. You celebrated the illegal removal of a child from this aircraft. The CEO watched that footage himself, twice. Oh my God, Harrison whispered. He looked like he was going to be sick. Oh, my God. It was a misunderstanding. I will apologize. Let me talk to him. I can fix this. My account. Harrison Global. We can... No, Mr. Harrison, you can't, Robert said flatly. I have just been on the line with our corporate accounts division. Mr. Thompson has personally voided the Aerovantis corporate contract with Harrison Global, citing a breach of our partnership ethics clause. As of tonight, your company is no longer a preferred partner. All outstanding travel credits are forfeited. Your company is, and I quote, blacklisted. Blacklisted? Harrison squeaked. That's $12 million in travel. You can't. That's illegal. It's policy, sir. And as for your personal benefits, Robert tapped on his tablet. Your executive platinum status revoked. Your 1.4 million accumulated frequent flyer miles zeroed out. You are now, officially, a general admissions passenger with no status. Welcome to Aerovantis. Harrison was hyperventilating, his eyes wide with an animal panic. You will be hearing from my lawyers. This is theft. This is character assassination. I will ruin you. I'll ruin all of you. I'm not. Sir, Robert interrupted, his voice suddenly like a steel blade. You just threatened a member of this flight crew. You are hostile. You are disruptive. And you are, frankly, the reason this flight is 4 hours late. On behalf of Captain Miles, who is in full agreement, we are invoking our right to refuse service. Harrison froze. Refuse service? What? What does that mean? It means, Robert said, that the new flight crew does not feel safe with you on board. You are a liability. You are being removed from this aircraft. The parallel was so brutal, so perfect, that Harrison couldn't even process it. You're kicking me off? After I paid $10,000 for this ticket, you can't do this. Oh, but we can, sir. And we are. Robert turned his head slightly and spoke into his lapel microphone. Security team to 7C. We have a non-compliant passenger for removal. Again. A moment later, the heavy, tired footsteps of Officer Miller and Officer Sanchez echoed on the jet bridge. They appeared in the aisle, looking profoundly annoyed. Mr. Harrison, Officer Miller sighed, reading the name from a card. Sir, this is getting ridiculous. You, of all people, should know the drill. Please gather your belongings. You're coming with us. No! Harrison screamed, his voice cracking. I am not moving. I am a paying customer. This is my seat. You're assaulting me." He swiped at Officer Sanchez, who caught his wrist with an almost bored expression. "That's assault on an officer, sir. You can do this here, or you can do this in handcuffs at the precinct. Your choice." The fight drained out of Harrison in a pathetic whoosh. Defeated, trembling, and utterly broken, he allowed himself to be pulled from his seat. The officers grabbed his expensive leather briefcase and his suit jacket. This is preposterous," he whimpered. As they guided him to the aisle, the exact same path Maya had walked, the cabin was silent. But this time, it wasn't a silence of pity. It was a silence of stunned, perfect justice. As he passed 10A, a passenger raised his phone and the camera flash went off. Then another. And another. He was being filmed just as he had filmed Maya. As he was frog-marched off the jet bridge, a lone passenger in the back of the business cabin began to clap, slowly. Then another joined in. Within seconds, the entire cabin, and even parts of economy, had erupted in a spontaneous, thunderous, and cathartic round of applause. The nightmare was finally over. Robert, the purser, watched him go, his face impassive. He then turned to the cabin, straightened his tie, and gave a small, crisp bow. "My sincerest apologies for that final disturbance. We are now, finally, clear for departure." 6 hours later, a sleek, matte black Gulfstream G650 cut through the pre-dawn mist over London and touched down at Heathrow's private terminal with barely a whisper. The jet didn't go to the main terminal. It taxied directly to the Windsor Suite, a building reserved for royalty, heads of state, and, as it turned out, the extremely angry families of airline CEOs. Inside the suite, Marcus Thompson was pacing by a fireplace, his suit jacket off, his tie yanked loose. He looked haggard. He hadn't slept. He'd been on the phone for 6 straight hours, talking to Paul, to his legal team, and to his board. He had torn down 3 careers and 1 multi-million-dollar corporate contract. But none of it mattered. He was just a father, waiting for his daughter. An aide opened the door. "Sir, the jet has docked. She's here." Marcus ran out the door and onto the rain-slicked tarmac. The jet's door opened, and a set of stairs descended. Maya appeared at the top. She was still in the same grey tracksuit, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked small, exhausted, and impossibly tired. But she wasn't crying. Her eyes were clear, and they held a new, hard wisdom. She saw her father. She didn't run. She just walked down the steps, one by one. The moment her feet hit the tarmac, Marcus was there. He closed the distance in 2 strides and wrapped her in his arms, lifting her off the ground, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. He buried his face in her hair, and his broad shoulders, which carried the weight of a 60,000-employee company, shook. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice thick. "You're safe. You're here. I've got you." Maya just held on, her face pressed against his chest. "I'm okay, Dad," she whispered. I'm really tired." He set her down, but kept his hands on her shoulders, his eyes scanning her face. "I know, baby girl. I am so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I should have sent the private car. It wasn't your fault, Dad," she said, her voice stronger now. She just hated me. From the second I got on. She just decided I was nobody. And that man, in 7C, he smirked at me when they took me. He smiled. Marcus's jaw tightened, the CEO returning for a brief, cold moment. "He's not smirking anymore, Maya. I promise you that. He won't be smirking for a very, very long time. It's over. They're gone." He put his arm around her, pulling her close as he guided her toward the black Range Rover waiting by the building. He opened the door for her, and she slid in. As he walked around to the driver's side, Marcus looked back at the private jet, a symbol of his power, and then at the main terminal, a symbol of his failure. He had built an empire, but he had almost let its worst, most rotten parts destroy his own daughter. He had fixed this incident. But the real work, the work of tearing out the rot of prejudice from the foundations of his company, was just beginning. He got in the car. The cabin was warm and silent. "Let's go home, Dad," Maya said, finally letting out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 10 hours. "We're going home," he said, taking her hand. And for the first time that night, he knew it was true. And that's how Brenda Sullivan's 22-year career ended, not with a retirement party, but with a security escort out of the terminal, blacklisted from the industry she loved. And Mr. Harrison? He learned in the most expensive way possible that his corporate account wasn't as powerful as basic human decency. Marcus Thompson's memo to all 60,000 Aerovantis employees the next morning was simple. "We are a global carrier. We welcome the world. Bias in any form is a betrayal of that promise. It is a cancer, and we will cut it out, no matter the cost. We are better than this. Be better." Maya's story became a legend, a harsh lesson learned in real time. The consequences were swift, severe, and a powerful reminder that what you do in the dark or in the business class cabin will always come to light. What did you think of Brenda's karma? Was it too much or not enough? And what about Mr. Harrison's? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story and want to hear more real-life karma, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. Thank you for listening.